Commissioner Plummer setting up the live stream. We'll start with a roll call. Tom, do you have that, or you want me to do that? Okay. It'll probably be a minute before we get going anyway. After the roll call, we have 2 minutes to approve. I think we had technical difficulties the day of the last one in September, and we didn't have that out. So, Bobby, let me know when you're on. We're on the air. Okay, we're live. Call the Planning Commission meeting of Henry County to order for Thursday, October 20th, 2022. First, we will have roll call. Looks like everybody's here. We have Dale Cole. Here. David Fisher. Here. Kenan Gray is here. Marsha Gratner. Here. Jake Martin Jr. I guess JR is not here. Okay. Terry Matney. Present. Bobby Plummer. Lori Pritchett. Here. Jason Roberts. Here. Danielle Hunt. Okay, she's the rep from Extension Office. Ex officio, not here. Okay. We are going to reverse the order of the case numbers. We're going to take up case number 2022-62 first. Oh, thank you. I had this same problem with the council meeting. Skipping ahead. Yes, let's do the minutes first. We have 2 minutes, as I mentioned earlier. We have the minutes from August 18th. Commission members, you should have a copy. If there are no corrections, if there are, please state. If there are not, I'd entertain a motion to approve. It's been approved by Dale. Do I have a second? Second by David. Yes, absolutely.
Because September, I don't think Marcia and Dell were here. If we could make the motion to, are we accepting all together or just August?
Well, I just said August 18th. That is correct.
Okay,
on the
just
September.
August. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you were doing it all together.
Yeah.
I apologize.
So if that's correct as far as those people who were here, my recollection 3 months ago was that is correct. I have a motion to and a second. Any discussion, corrections? If not, all in favor, aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Passes 8-0. Yes, Bobby. Now, there are corrections as far as attendance, which I've also mentioned to America, who I think we introduced at the last meeting. Maybe not. Did we? No. Introduce yourself, America. I need to press the right button. That's the first instruction I should give.
I'm America Nevitt. I'm the new clerk for the Planning Commission.
Yes, thank you. And I already mentioned to her, and I think Bobby was about to mention it, Dale Cole and Marsha Gratner were not present at our September 15th meeting. If we could make those corrections, that would be great. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Bobby. Here a second.
I'll second.
Second by Terry. Any discussion or corrections? If not, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 8-0. Thank you. And I was going to say we're going to take up case number 2262 by Jagat Singh, VR Empire First for a CAU. Again, that's 2262. Do we have a representative here? Yes, we do. If you would step up to the microphone on the podium. I'm going to read through some things that are just managerial. This is current zoning general business. It will go before CAU, before the commission, with a recommendation from the Planning Commission. There's the background summary on your handout. It's a remodel, a gas station, basically a commercial building, a convenience store type, and the former McCrockland Ford area, Middletown, known as Maple Village. There's some key issue summaries relating to the comprehensive plan that you can read. Planning Commission shall recommend the approval, denial, or approval with modifications. The proposed request, which is general business, almost 4 acres. There's no floodplain, no special circumstances. Vehicle access connects to Mill Street and North 800 West. Septic is sewer, well municipal. There is no subdivision restrictions. To the northeast, south, and west are all general business and 1 local business to the south. The specs are listed on the 3rd page. They meet the minimum lot, minimum width, building height, front yard setback, minimum side, rear, no accessory structure. History, property has long history of commercial use. Page 16 of the comp plan for consideration, particular attention should be given to promoting the orderly development and redevelopment of the county. Page 100, ensure that zoning district standards are updated to accurately reflect and allow for the various land use categories described throughout this plan. Planning considerations are development plans consistent with projected development and use of the area. Is the proper zoning in place? Is adequate ingress and egress available to the site? And will there be any negative impacts on vehicular traffic in the area? Will there be any detrimental impact on parking in the area? And you see a recommendation from our zoning administrator. Yes, sir. Identify yourself, and we're going to open up for probably your presentation and or question and answers from the Planning Commission members. Go ahead.
Do I need to press the button?
If the green light's on, it's on. You might need to press it to have it on, but go.
Okay.
She's our microphone expert and our online
green light
expert,
is
since we are live streaming this for the public.
Okay.
Because you're taller, I always, there you go.
Well, that'll work. My name is Chris Cooper with Core Consulting. We are kind of a consultant on this project. We did the primary initial topographic survey, and we were helping with some of the site design. I'm here representing Trip Engineering and Consulting. I'm here to answer any questions or concerns you might have about the project.
Planning Commission member, you have a map. It looks like a GIS Beacon Schneider map showing the blue carved out area that's nearly 4 acres. Any questions of a representative relating to the packet that you've received for this case? Questions, comments?
It's a convenient.
Let me do that in the microphone so everybody can hear. This is gas station only, not gas station convenience store, or
It's both.
It's
Gas
both?
station and convenience
Okay.
store, yes. And there should have been plans with interior modifications for the
I
convenience store.
apologize, I did see that. I apologize.
Yeah, and I did not read that either. So it would be, like fountain drinks and candy and
Yeah.
knickknacks that you usually
Soft
see.
drinks. There was a hot station, a cold station, and a row of coolers,
Donuts.
probably.
I might visit. Okay. Legitimate questions from the Planning Commission, since mine wasn't.
I see on the checklist, septic permit, do you have plans to put in a septic tank, or what's the plans on that?
No, I think the plan is to tie into the existing sanitary that already exists within the building. There's already restrooms in the building. They'll just expand it for I think they're only putting in a small half bath that'll tie into the existing sewer.
McCrockland Ford had existing sewer
Yes,
and
yes.
all of that, yep.
Yeah. As far as I know, no utility modifications will be made at all. The building already has everything needed.
question for our zoning administrator. Since this falls within the city limits or town limits of Middletown, is this something that has or will, once it passes here and goes through the CAU process with the commissioners, run also by or has already run by the town council of Middletown?
It's my understanding that the council at Middletown already knows about the project.
Okay. And have
Is that
you,
correct, Chris?
I believe so, yes.
have you received, I know you're required to send out letters of neighbors. Have you received anything for or against from anyone?
No, I only received one letter from someone who had a property across the street, and they just wondered if there was room in town for more than 2 gas stations other than that, and they wanted to know how it was being funded. Was Middletown or the county participating in funding in any way? And I assured them they were not.
Okay, so this was a potential competitor asking those questions.
That'd be my guess.
Okay, sounds like it might be. Okay. Other questions from the Planning Commission members?
Yeah, I was just kind of curious, about the tanks that you're going to be burying. Any comments you've got about that, safety and, construction, installation, just to kind of alleviate any mystery or concern in that area?
Yeah, and I wouldn't have any specifics on that. All I know is on the plan where they plan to bury them, but as far as, that's beyond my capacity of expertise.
Sites, types, materials, all of those.
Yeah, and I'm sure I assume that all has to go through and be approved by the building when it,
I imagine it has to be approved by IDEM.
yes.
More than likely.
Yeah, there will be an item submittal. And I know there was a previous gas station on this corner years ago, but it was further south and east. There was some environmental mediation that was done on that site years ago, but it came up when we started researching this.
Do you happen to know if this applicant, this is the first type of structure or gas station convenience store that they've operated or proposed or in operation, or is there a history, or do we know?
I do not know for sure, but I do believe they operate other convenience stores, just not in Henry County.
Okay,
And I can find that out if you need to know.
just more curious, it's not necessary. Just
I'm curious, Tom, and this is a more you question. The CAU won't come to the commissioners. Is that correct?
It does not have to come to the commissioners.
Okay.
We can, sometimes we do if there is a huge interest in the community, but it is not a requirement that it
Okay.
goes to the commissioners.
Okay. I just wasn't certain if it was or was not.
Yeah, it's not a requirement. Rezones and certain other things are,
Yeah.
but if it doesn't change the zoning map and it doesn't change our code, then it doesn't have to come to.
But the CAUs that do those things then come to the
Yes,
commissioners.
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So your recommendation would be that that's not necessary in this case because it's not a change?
No, this is
zoning.
actually a pretty straightforward project. Some of the questions that Chris can't answer, it's kind of not because he doesn't know, it's just really not in his bailiwick for design. It will go through the permitting process at the state. They will have to get a state design release. That has to be done before any building permits get issued. So there's a process to go through before we even start to look at the plans. This is kind of the first step that we go through.
Sounds like a first step of many.
It is for them.
Yeah, so it's one of those requirements. Any other questions?
Yeah, how many employees do you plan on having?
Again, I'm not certain of what they'll employ. I don't work for the company that's going to run the convenience store or the gas station, so it's hard for me to say.
As I read over it, is compared with others that we've had in the past, this is fairly straightforward. Other questions? of our representative here. Any questions for our zoning administrator or our attorney or, I don't have any, but if you do, now would be the time. Go ahead. Somebody see something? No, Sean? No? Any other member? I would entertain a motion. Again, we can approve, deny, approve with modifications. I would entertain a motion for one of the three. Okay, well, we'll delay and talk about donuts more while we're looking for the three questions. The commission, we are used to the three questions for CAU, even though this doesn't go to the commissioner. Okay, go ahead. Either Sean or Tom.
The first question is, the proposed commission-approved use is to be located in a zoning district wherein such use may be permitted. You want to check? Dale Cole? Yes. David Fisher? Yes. Ken and Gray? Yes. Marcia Gratner? Yes. Jake is absent. Jake Martin is absent, correct? Yes. Let's miss that. Terry?
Yes.
Patney? Bobby Plummer? Yes. Lori Pritchett? Yes. Jason Roberts? Yes. The second question, can you bring that a little bit closer for me? Second question is, the requirements set forth in the zoning district and the section for such commission-approved use will be met. Dale Cole? Yes. David Fisher? Yes. Ken and Gray?
Yes.
Marcia Gratner? Yes. Jake Martin is absent. Terry Matney?
Yes.
Bobby Plummer?
Yes.
Lori Pritchett? Yes. Jason Roberts? Yes. Question 3, the proposed uses are consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of these regulations, will not substantially and permanently injure the appropriate use of the neighboring property, and will serve the public convenience and welfare. Dale Cole? Yes. David Fisher? Yes. Ken and Gray?
Yes.
Marcia Gratner? Absent. Terry Matney?
Yes.
Jake's absent. Yeah. Okay. Bobby Plummer?
Yes.
Lori Pritchett? Yes. Jason Roberts? Yes. And all three questions are answered in the affirmative, so it is approved.
Anything else we need to do is that the approval, it has been approved by the Planning Commission, one of your numerous steps.
Yes.
Check off the first.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being present and for answering our questions. Have a good day, sir. Now we have case number 2261. Request for commission-approved use for an event venue, rustic barn, roughly 3 acres. Current zoning is A1. I don't see where there's a request to rezone on Highway 36. There is an addendum that was sent to us with a little bit of history. The key issue, again, relating to a CAU and the comp plan is listed on your page 1 of your packet. There's a zoning summary of A1 districts and what is permitted on A1 districts, which include like recreational enterprises and recreational development, a lake, et cetera. There is no floodplain or county drains through this roughly 3 acres. There's no special circumstances. Current access is from US 36. Septic or sewer unknown, which is something we may wish to address or ask. There's no information provided about water service. To the north is A1 agriculture, so to the south, east, and west is A1 Agricultural, row crops, all owned by the applicant, except to the north, which is the SCORE property. History is listed on page 3. Owned by Brian Flynn, July 2022, transferred to Rustic Barn LLC. Planning considerations. It says the area does not have the infrastructure or utilities to support retail or business establishment, but is well suited for an event venue with good public access in a rural area, but close to major county population area. Agricultural zoning is compatible with intended use. You can read over page 3, 4, and there's a map attached which shows the properties to the east, west, and south, where you see the pond, are by the same owner, the applicant. To the north is across the road is a different landowner. Okay, I'm going to sort of defer to zoning administrator or our council to kind of review the addendum, which gives commission approved use. It goes from March of 2021, and the history of what's been done and not done. I'm going to confer with one of you two to educate the planning commission, if you would, please.
Kenan, why don't we go on and let them present their CAU request?
Representatives, if you would, come forward. And again, if the green light is on, we can hear you, and so can the folks that are tuned in online.
Okay. Kind of pointed that way.
Yeah, your distance.
That better?
You may have to just speak up loudly.
Okay, I don't want to break it. So what we have is we have our commission-approved use request. We filed the application. We have complied with the notice requirements. I provided all that documentation to the zoning administrator. A couple weeks ago, the ad ran on, I believe, October 8th. We've received some other statements in support. Some have already been emailed to the zoning administrator. Some are handwritten here today. Basically, you guys had some questions I heard when you were going through the summary about septic operations.
And that was not addressed.
Yeah, so one of the things that I sent to the zoning administrator and he should have is the septic waiver from the state of Indiana. That would give us 2 years from the approval, which I believe was in late August, to build a septic system on site. That's pretty typical. I know that's what Barn 38 had, was they had the portalets until I think they ran out this year or whatever, but that's typical for this type of establishment. If it works, then you have the money to put the septic system in. If it doesn't work, you don't, and at the end of 2 years or possibly before, you abandon the use. So that was part of it. The water situation would be off the well, being that far away from any type of city or town system. What other questions did you have off that?
Just a footnote question on the well. Is that something that our Hendry County Health Department has to approve?
Yeah.
And is that forthcoming? Is that like the waiver, or has something taken place from them to approve whatever the capacity of this event barn is anticipated? I don't know.
Right. So once we get the approval, then there's some building permits that will need to be forthcoming. They'll be conferring with the health department on both of the issues with septic and water, but that'll be forthcoming once we get an approval, if that's what the board decides to do.
Anything else you'd like to present or open up for questions from Mr. Saunders? And then I would like one of you two to kind of summarize the history, because I see that there has been some history and there may be questions from the commission members based on, go ahead, Marcia. Do you have a microphone? You don't over there.
So you live out there, so you're kind of familiar with how it is. So we have begun the process with the state of Indiana to have, they call it a road cut. It's really just a butt your entrance up to the road. And we've begun the process. I believe they heard back today that they want it to be a certain width and have a culvert pipe under it, and then we should be fine. But there won't be any, there's no necessity for widening the road or having turn-off lanes or anything like that. Since this is just going to be a limited-use event center, mainly on the weekends, there's not a big issue from the state's perspective with traffic.
So I just want to make sure I understand this. Do you go up that gravel ramp, or do you go around and enter from the lower level?
Enter into the buildings. Yeah, it'll be up the ramp. We have to get state approval on the design of that ramp, which has not yet been done because we're waiting for approval.
Oh, can you hear me now? Okay. My concern was you're going up that ramp.
Mm-hmm.
On either side, it's a little like a drop off.
Yeah, the ramp's, yeah, so you're talking about the original bank barn ramp that was there. That ramp's being redesigned.
Okay.
It'll be flat across.
Okay.
And then, of course, there'll be guide rails on the side.
Okay.
It'll be in compliance with all necessary safety requirements.
Okay.
And that'll be the ADA access to the building as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Reading through some of this, it indicates that Crandall Engineering submitted plans and variants to the state of Indiana last July. Were they aware at that time that it was going to be an event venue when, for example, you said that off of 36 wouldn't require any special, I don't know, deceleration lane or anything, a certain width on the culvert going through? Were they aware of what the intent was for this facility when they didn't designate any kind of requirements off transportation off 36 or anything? Were they fully aware of what the intent of this structure was going to be?
When the state did the design release on the back
Yes.
barn, yeah, the state just knew that what it was going to be used for. All they did was sign off on the, I guess, the structural integrity and the safety of the building itself. They, at that time, did not make any determination of anything else. That's what NDOT does. All Homeland Security does, to my knowledge, is determine whether the building is going to be safe for commercial purposes.
So if this commission were to approve, would then NDOT get involved? Because I would think a commercial venture off of a U.S. highway might require something from NDOT, for example.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about, was they've already reported back to us what the width of the entrance has to be, of the cut, as they call it, and that it has to have that drain culvert under the entrance. Yeah, we've taken that step already as well.
We passed something recently for an automotive expansion south of town off of 3, and we didn't know at the time. It came back, the state said you have to have a deceleration lane off of 3, being a divided 4-lane highway, et cetera, that was not anticipated, nor did we ask at that time, so that's why we're asking now.
Yeah, zoning administrator and I have had several conversations about this project here recently, and he did tell me to make sure we contacted NDOT. So hopefully we'd have an answer to that question for you guys tonight.
So to be specific, when they gave the design criteria, they knew this was going to be an event venue? when they gave you the numbers, as far as the entrance and the culvert and all that, they knew it was going to be an event venue, or they just thought you were, just rebuilding the structure?
So when the state signed off on the design release for the barn, is that what you're asking? Yes, they knew that the planned use was an event center, and that the barn itself, so there's an old barn and a newly constructed addition. And to retrofit that whole agricultural structure to the event center, they had to sign off on everything being good for that. And we wanted to make sure that they would sign off on that before all of this process. Because when you're retrofitting, it's a little different from when you're building new, because if you're building new and something's wrong, you can just fix it. But with it being an existing agricultural structure, if it wasn't going to work and the state wasn't going to sign off, then obviously you wouldn't want to go through this process if you had to tear everything down and put it back.
I guess I have a question for our zoning administrator. There's a long list of permitted uses under A1, and of course, events, they can't list everything because there's probably 100 different types of entities. It doesn't mention event center, but it does recreational development and enterprise. Is this permitted use under A1?
Yes, that's the part that falls under, that they've been doing these previous event centers under entertainment event center.
Okay. Wanted to.
And to add a little more to Terry's question, the state highway doesn't really talk to the fire and building safety people. So the fire and building safety people have their thing, and they deal pretty much with a site in that, whatever goes on the site or the buildings or potential buildings or anything else, that's what the state design review does. The highway department is responsible for access to a site. So they don't necessarily talk to each other, but yes, when they did apply for their design release, they did know what the intended use of the site was.
One of the things I read here is it says that the county surveyor issued a permit for the pond after the fact. In other words, they didn't go through the process beforehand. And there was a requirement attached to that the owner appear before the drainage board with a site plan and drainage calculations. And from the information I gathered researching this week, that has not yet taken place. Is there intentions to do so?
Yes, I'm working on that. I've spoken with Steve about it on 2 occasions, and he's told me how to take care of that process. So.
Okay.
I guess I'm going to ask Steve, do you have anything to say or add?
We just need to get the drain calculations and the site plans in front of the board so they can approve it. That's not what we've done yet. And I have talked to them.
Usually, I've only been on this for going on 4 years. Typically, it's been my experience that all the requirements for to come before the planning commission is checked off and taken place. It seems like, from what I read here, most of this building and pond is complete without going through the necessary permits. And for example, we just mentioned the drainage board and the drainage calculations, and even reading the state report from last July, it indicates that they were approving something that had already been built, which seems like it's backwards to the way typically you get permits and permissions before doing the building in order to check off the zoning and check off the transportation and the fire and the safety and everything else with the codes and the zoning and all that. Is there an explanation as to why? Because that's typically what comes before us. that all these things have been completed before going through those steps that are usually expected and required.
So the steps that you're wanting completed would be, I mean, because I don't know that I've never run through or watched one of these with these. I know there's been 2 approved, Barn 38 and then the one behind my house that they never did anything with. But on the, so this was originally built as an agricultural barn. And then they changed their mind and wanted to use it as an event center. So the design had to be released before we would know whether we could use this as an event center or not. Whether we could retrofit it. That's why that step was done backward. It'd be no different from going to a commercial building that's already built, or any building that's already built, and making sure it could be retrofitted to the satisfaction of the state before you spend money, time, and effort trying to get it approved.
And my understanding also from doing a little bit of research this week is that there's been a temporary restraining order and preliminary and permanent injunction was filed for this Rustic Barn LLC this June. Events have taken place since then. No occupancy permit has been issued. No CAU has been approved. And then there was a continuance to August 16th, and the latest injunction continuance reset for November the 9th, which a couple weeks from now, 2.5 weeks. During the time of the injunction, there have been functions at the Rustic Red Barn that, you know, reading that kind of raises red flags for me. Should it not?
Yeah, so I got involved at that time. I engaged in negotiations with counsel for the commission and the zoning administrator, and they wanted work to stop until there was a commission approval, and work stopped. There's 2 or 3 permits, I think, in the pipeline that when there's an approval would be released, but the understanding was that doing what we're doing here today, and if we get the approval that we need, that lawsuit will go away. And we've just been continuing it until we could get our permit on file, which is what we've done.
This is where I would probably defer to our counsel that you said you have spoken with, and zoning administrator. If something were to occur out on this site and they don't have the proper occupancy and CAU and permits and drainage and NDOT and everything else, who's legally responsible for that?
So just on the litigation side of it, I can update where we've asked, there's 2 different types of injunctions. So there's like a preliminary injunction, which is a temporary injunction. And then there's a permanent injunction, which is permanent, as you can imagine. And we asked the court to issue a preliminary injunction to prevent essentially any sort of non-conforming use at this point, or any activities that would require commission-approved use. So like concerts, events, weddings, things like that, until we can get this figured out. So that litigation is ongoing, and I don't necessarily want to comment on pending litigation, but I would say that we did file a petition that would also contemplate if this body were to deny a request for a CAU, we'd ask the court grant some relief that any injunction would then become permanent. And so essentially there would be not only a denial of the CAU, but also a court order preventing the named defendants or respondents from utilizing or using the property in that sort of non-conforming use or in a use that is not approved by the commission, to try to put some teeth behind it. Now, if the commission approves it tonight, whatever happens with it, I'm not going to comment on what's going to happen to litigation going forward, but, you know, that's something that Tom and I will be discussing with you all as my client. So, but that litigation-wise, that's where we stand right now today. So there is a preliminary injunction as far as preventing any sort of non-conforming use being used currently. I know there's been a few, what's conveyed to me as personal type events at the venue, to whatever extent. I can let Tom comment on if he wants to, but that's the extent of it as I understand it. So that's from the legal side, litigation side, that's where we stand here today.
So I do have a question, Tom, about the building permit, because I know construction was started with, the addition to the barn was started without a building permit, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And there's a time frame that permit is valid. Have we extended that time frame, and has that permit expired?
The original permit, which was issued on March 26th of 2021, was for a barn addition. Very nondescript. It was pretty much those many words. Expand the barn, and it looked at the foundation that was there, according to the building inspector. That's what it looked like, just a simple addition to a barn. What eventually emerged was a pretty darn fancy barn addition that was all glass, and then word started getting out that there was another plan. So from somewhere in around March of 2021, there was obviously an intent to have a venue there, even though they hadn't stated in their permit that was their intention. We would have asked, I wasn't even there at the time, but a lot of other questions would have been asked, and I think they were, by the previous administrator. And so that was the original permit for that barn addition. There have been several other things built on the property. A stage was built, the pond was built, parking areas were put in, some other concrete work was done without any permits before the fact. We discovered those things. We went out, made some measurements in some cases, and made them come in and get permits after the fact. So that kind of appears to be ongoing. And they were told at the time, I spoke with Ms. Pirtle, and I said, if you don't get a commission approval and you have problems and you abandon your project, what more do you need to do to make this something you can just use yourself? At that time, I knew they'd obtained some really nice wood. They were putting in a new floor and doing some painting, and I said, you can finish your painting, you can finish putting your floor in, but from now on, let's proceed in correct fashion. I don't think they necessarily did that, and they continued to do some other things. I have not been out there inside the building since, so I don't know how much work they've continued to do. As far as the events that they've done, they appear to be, they're events. I don't know if they're personal, or if, even if they were personal, an occupancy permit, inspections of the building, and various other things need to be done before the building can be used for something. If you build your own house, you go out and build a brand new house, you have to get an occupancy permit before you can occupy your own house, let alone a building that you're going to invite the public into in any fashion. Without an occupancy permit, which comes after all the building has been done, I don't view that as lawful use of that building. The intention was clearly there to change it from a agricultural barn to something else, and something that would involve the public attending.
So her question on expiration. From what I understand, the original was an expansion of an agricultural barn, and that permit was granted with that explanation at that time, and the county code calls for 18 months from an issuance of a permit. And even though that permit turned out to be a venue different than what the original permit was granted, the description of an expansion of a barn, that 18 months, if we're looking at March 26, 2021, has since come and expired, right?
That's correct. They would be required to fill out a new building permit application, and that new application will have to have an accurate site plan as to what they already have done and what they intend to do. If they may need to modify that. There are some proposed items on the latest site plan that they submitted. They will either have to remove the proposed plans. For instance, there's an outdoor bar listed. Either they're going to have to flesh out the rest of the design for that outdoor bar or take it off their plans altogether and come back in the future if they need to or want to put in an outdoor bar.
That would require some kind of alcohol permit.
Yeah, that's correct.
So as of right now, there is I believe there's a concrete permit that's been filed and a deck permit that's been filed that hasn't been approved because of the stop work order. And we approached about another permit, an electrical permit, and we're told that it's a stop work order, we're not issuing any permits, so we haven't applied for any more permits. And we have had the building inspector out to inspect the property. He told us what needed to be done and what was fine. So that's done. And as far as the renewal of the permit goes, we were told back in August, no permits would issue. So we haven't reapplied for anything. And nothing else has been done since the stop work order.
I know other commission members probably have similar questions. I'm in a quandary as to chicken and egg. I'm in a quandary whether we should wait to hear the outcome of the injunction, or the injunction's partially waiting on a decision from this planning commission. I'm sure wish somebody could break that tie in my mind.
My understanding is it's waiting on action from the planning commission as to whether the injunction is temporary and dropped or whether it becomes permanent if it's denied.
I will say that I'm hesitant at this point because we are used to a certain, not used to, it should be required and is required, a certain process from start to finish. Nothing is built, nothing is done, the plans come, the drainage, they go before the drainage, they get the permits, we approve the usage, and then they start building and do all that. So I'm just going to kind of jump ahead, and with that said, I'm going to make a motion to table this until the legal injunction is completed.
It's been moved to press pause until after the November
Let me jump in a minute,
date. And
if I could.
Yeah, and it's been seconded. Now, open for discussion.
Well, so basically what the injunction does is basically gives additional teeth, I suppose, to our enforcement capabilities. That's just an enforcement mechanism to try to keep the respondent or applicant in compliance with what our code is. So that temporary injunction, the purpose of that was to basically try to additionally kind of impress on the responding party to not continue with non-conforming activities or activities that have to be approved by the CAU. So like if, and you all decide, you're the deciders, as as a former president once said, you're the decider. If you deny it, then Tom and I would probably go to court and say we want that to be a permanent injunction because the CAU was denied. If you approve it with stipulations or with conditions, like a conditional approval, which I think they can do, then Mr. Saunders' client would have to go back, meet all those conditions, and then actually have actual approval from this body. Or you can just approve it outright and say, go to the Drainage Board, go get all these other things done. You can approach this whatever way that you decide to do. Or you can table it for tonight and you can tell them to come back later. It's just entirely your call on that.
And I would just say what my concern is, and I'm trying to choose my words correctly because I don't want to be offensive to anybody. But history has shown since March of 2021, rules have not been followed blatantly. And I just have a major concern with that. I mean, you know what? A couple here or there, not a big deal to me. You know, okay, something falls through the crack. I mean, that's not a big deal to me. But it seems like it's just been a blatant one after the other, not following the rules and doing the correct process is how I see it at this point. I don't necessarily want to delay for a year, but I'm not sure that I'm not sure where I'm at.
Might I make a suggestion that
Please do, because we have a motion and a second. So we're still in discussion, but go ahead.
maybe if it was tabled and gave us time to all talk about it a little bit more, I would have no problem with a continuance on the legal action, because that's only a couple of weeks away. I wouldn't have a problem doing that while we work out conditional recommendations. And I think we pretty much know what those are right now, but we may want to get those in writing. And by the time we actually would come to another meeting, Mr. Rust will have met and done what he needs to do, and maybe he can tell us when that's going to happen.
Just a point of order and clarification. The motion was to table. Is that correct?
Well, I was very specific, so I think I need to modify my motion from.
You want to withdraw the first?
Yeah, let me withdraw my
Okay.
motion.
You want to withdraw the second? Okay, go ahead, Bobby.
Okay, so let me withdraw that and let me make the motion that I would like to table this until we can work out some of the conditions and the information necessary to move forward.
And that's part of that continuance that you were just describing beforehand.
Sean, did I convey what in the motion, did I convey what I wanted to convey in the motion to get the motion correct?
I think so. I'm not a mind reader, but
I know,
think
but
you
I think
did.
what I'm trying to do is, I want to table it until we can get the additional information, and maybe he can meet in front of the Drainage Board and do all those conditions that might need to be done. So I think I made that motion correct. I want to table it until we can get some of those. He can meet in front of the Drainage Board, get that taken out. We can get those conditions of all these steps need to be completed, and then come back to the Planning Commission.
Table with stated conditions.
Table with conditions. That was one of the options, correct?
Does that sound appropriate?
It does. There are other conditions which go without saying that need to be met in this process. They know what they are. There are conditions that are set down in their state design release and some of those things that they need to do. And they also need to understand that they can't, we're coming to the end of the season, so they don't have much more activity out there, but they don't need to be having any activities in there, private or public. I know not too long ago they did have an event out there.
Do those specifics have to be part of the motion or part of the
I don't think they
minutes?
need to be part of the motion because they're part of guidelines
The
and state
process,
law
code.
and county codes anyway. But
Okay.
they do need to follow them. They've already ignored quite a few.
And I mean, I would agree with Bobby. I mean, it just seems like the spirit of the process hasn't been followed. And, there's been a lack of compliance. And so when I hear, comments that, this will be done, this will be done. At this point in time, I lack the confidence that they will be, and it may not fall back to, kind of what we've experienced in the past. So I guess I say all this as far as, my expectations, if we have to revisit this again, kind of what I'm going to be looking for is just a single vote, that I see some, some dedication to doing this the right way. The process has to come first. It can't come afterwards. That just leads to chaos. So, that's my concerns going forward based on what's going on in the past, and then basically how I will, probably what my attention will be focused on if we revisit this again.
Okay, we have a motion. I allowed you to do discussion before a second. Anybody want to second her motion for, yeah, I saw a hand up. Did you second it? Go ahead. Terry did.
I've heard both comments up there from John or Tom, and but I don't know if you saw this place yet or not. They put a lot of work into it, whether it's right or wrong. I know Mr. Flynn for quite some time. He's a businessman, and why he went ahead and done things, I guess he took for granted that he wouldn't be no problem on getting it approved, But where he's at now, I hate to see this all done away with. If it means until we can get everything in order, then I'm in favor of that, But it's a beautiful place if you haven't been by there. It's an ideal place for what they're planning on doing.
Your motion didn't run counter to what Dale just said. was
Correct,
it?
no, it did not. It was
more
a table
of a table
until.
pause.
It was a
until-
table until, it was not a,
Until the proper steps are finally taken, which usually is done beforehand, as I heard Terry. So is there an official second to the motion to table? Okay, it's been moved by Bobby. Okay, that's fine. And seconded by Dale. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion to table with the conditions that Bobby stated, say aye.
aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 8-0. So it's more of a pause until some of the steps that usually are done beforehand are taken care of, and you work that out with the zoning administrator and our council. And that would come back to us eventually if those steps are made.
Sounds good.
Thank you. And just like the council meeting, I lost my agenda. I'm consistent. I'm human. I got it. I found it. Let's put it that way. I found it. Any old business anyone has?
I have none.
I will state that I received photographs from the dog, I don't know how to describe it, the dog rearing place on County Road 325 West, I think. And great improvements have been made as we had asked, and Tom and I did do a site visit. She was telling us, the owner, what she had anticipated on doing, and from the pictures, I didn't get out there with you on whether there was plans, but we both got delayed on that. From what pictures I saw, she has followed through with what she said she was going to do. So further comments?
Yeah, I think she's done an admirable job of working on the building and adding a recreational area for the dogs, and has screening up around everything, and it's pretty impressive, actually.
And that outside area is further away from the neighbor who was here, I'm not going to say complaining, but had concerns with the noise. So any other old business? That's a positive old business. Any new business anyone has for the Planning Commission? Tom, anything new?
No, not really.
Now,
I guess the only thing I would add is we have in our office now the secondary plat for the improvements down at State Road 3 and I-70. and that's Spiceland Ventures project. I think
That's a hotel.
yes,
Okay.
and I think that's going before Steve's committee within the next couple week for Spiceland Ventures. Is that correct, Steve?
Okay, so that's progressing.
So that's progressing, and they're still looking for a likely developer for a hotel, but they have a couple of choices. And I was at a meeting 2 weeks ago in Greenfield with two representatives from Indianapolis that are hotel developers and with the site developer. And we looked at their hotels and what their plans are and what they would propose to do over here.
Very good. We hope that comes to fruition because we need a name brand hotel in our area. And down by I-70 would make a lot of sense. Hopefully that works out quickly as possible. Any other new business? Well, now hold on. Before we get a second. Our November meeting, today we had to move up because a prominent member couldn't be here at our normal fourth Thursday council, Henry County Council meeting. Well, that's the same that occurs in November and December because the fourth Thursday falls on Thanksgiving Day, which no one's going to want to meet then, so we're on the third Thursday then too. Today, we moved it up to 3 o'clock, which worked out well because we finished about 4:45. I know you can't, we haven't anticipated cases, do we not, for November? More than likely, yes, I thought so. So what we would need to do is, I guess we would meet at our same time of 5 o'clock. I don't have that date. Is that the 20th? 17th? Okay, November, and the council will just have to work around it like we did today. And the same with the December meeting, if we should have one, we'll have to do the same because that falls right at Christmas or thereabouts. So we would have, the council have to work around the planning commission, which has already been set and advertised. Our dates are set and advertised too, but we'll just move the time so we have ample time to be out of here. Because I think we both find it conducive to use this venue with the mics and the online recording. So with that, if there's no other new business, Dale? Did I throw you off? Motion to adjourn. Second. Okay, we're adjourned until the 17th at 5.